this is John Cola with GrowingYourGreens.com. Today I have a very special episode for you. Got a request actually in my profile comments about filtering the water. Now I have had a few videos, that I mentioned filtering the water, and usually they're the episodes where I'm talking about my irrigation system. So in my front yard, I have basically a water filter that takes out the chlorine as well as other things. It's basically a carbon block filter. And why am I doing that and what's the importance of it? I want to cover that in detail in this video today. So today I'm at a friend's house at his installation, and I helped him put in a system here. And as you can see right next to me is basically a standard filter housing for standard filter, and we put a carbon block filter in there. And that's for one very important reason, to take out the chlorine primarily. Now, why do we want to take out the chlorine when we're watering our plants? Well, let's back up a little bit. This is first if you're on a municipal system. If you're on a well, you probably don't have chlorine in your water. And if you do, tap off your well pipes before you inject the chlorine for you to drink. But hopefully you probably don't have chlorine in your well water, so you're pretty good. But basically it comes down to this. Number one, we know, a lot of people know to drink, filtered water, or so, Americans buy countless and thousands of, probably millions of bottles of bottled water in the store every year, and I think that's such a waste to be buying bottled water because of the plastic and all this stuff. So we go out of our way for us to drink water without contaminants, including chlorine and other things. But we put our water out of our tap for our plants, and this is not too good. In my opinion, we should be filtering our water not only for our plants, which is really easy, but also for us. So filtering the water for the plants is a really easy step. You just get a simple filter like this. It's going to mainly remove the chlorine. Filtering for us now, that's a whole nother topic. Not talking about that today, but that would require a little better filtration system than just removing the chlorine. We would want to remove all the other impurities, because most of the water systems in the U.S. are really good water systems, but it's just we want to take out what they add into it. That's supposed to for them, it's for them to kill the bacteria and the protozoa and all these other things that are in the water that might contaminate it, that will cause a big disease outbreak, like there have been in the past in some areas when they're the additive program and they're not adding the chlorine for some reason, and there's an E. coli outbreak or something like that. So they add the chlorine for the water for good reason, for sanitation, and they don't want to be held liable. But in any case, what does that chlorine do, and why do they add it? Well, the answer is simple. It kills bacteria, fungi, and mold, and other things like that, so that you don't get sick. But in the same token, when we feed this chlorinated water to our plants, guess what it does? It kills the mold, the fungi, and the bacteria in our soils. So basically it devoids our terrain, or devoids our soils of these bacterias and fungi, which have an integral part in relationship with the root zones and the root systems of the plants, to basically help the plants in many cases uptake more nutrition. It all is a synergy. Our ecosystem it all works together. So we need to have all the components. So you see that I'm a very big believer in using compost, and guess what? Compost is rich in bacteria. I've also been adding mycorrhizae and other the Gorilla Grow and the Dino Grow have some the fungi in one of those products. And I add other fungi to my soil. I wish I could add some fun girls, but mostly fungi. Anyways, to my soil to basically help boost the root zone and the absorption of the nutrients into the plant. Because when your plant is absorbing more nutrients because of all the things in the soil is correct, guess what? You're going to have healthier plants. Your healthier plants are going to be more productive, and they're going to be more disease resistant. And got to get a kick in there for rock dust. So rock dust also helps to feed the beneficial microbes in there, and will make the whole system work much better, and also make your produce taste a lot sweeter, and of course yield more. So don't forget rock dust. But back to the topic at hand, is the chlorine. So the chlorine basically makes your soil sterile, and this is not a good thing. I'd highly recommend everybody get a filter system. They have several different kinds you could do. Like for this we plumb this into the standard sprinkler system, and then we convert it over to a drip irrigation. So basically it's just a standard filter housing, and we can unscrew that. I think here's the filter in here. So yeah, it's just a standard filter full of water right now. and there's the standard filter. It's a carbon block filter. Now there's many of these filters on the market today. If you get one at your standard Home Depot or Lowe's store, those are like the bottom of the barrel, like the crappiest carbon filters you could get. They will work, but they're going to be fairly expensive and will work for a minimum amount of gallons. The filters are all rated in how many gallons it could be effective at. So I think some of the Home Depot ones are maybe like 500 to 1,000 gallons. So that means every 1,000 gallons you pump through, you got to replace the filter. That could get very expensive. So I've researched, that was one whole night on the internet, researching the best possible filter for your garden. And what I came up with was the Matrix, MATRIKX +1 filter. That filter is called the Workhorse filter. It's a solid carbon block. It'll filter 20,000 gallons of water and take out the chlorine. And it basically looks like this. It's the standard size. They do come in larger sizes, but that can get significantly more expensive for the filters and the housings. So for the standard home, I just recommend this and buying like a case of Matrix KX +1 filters, so you'll have them on site, and they're often cheaper by the case. And you're going to go through them every 20,000 gallons. So yeah, these are very simple to install and put in place. So let's see. So if you can plumb it into a standard PVC glue-in fittings, or you could adapt that into a screw-on connector. So if, say, you don't have a drip system that's built into the irrigation system, you could just get some connectors on the end of this filter so that you could actually screw it into your hose. So if this system's too much, and this is the one I highly recommend, the next step down, which I did do at my community garden, I have a video on it actually, is using what's called they actually make a specific gardening filter, but that thing's kind of expensive for what it is. But what you could also use is basically a Sprite high output shower filter. So the shower filters basically take out the chlorine primarily for our shower, because once again, we don't want to be showering in chlorine because it causes dry and itchy skin and other things like that. But so basically, it will remove the chlorine as well. So I've got one of my shower filters, and then I adapted it with some fittings into the drip pipe. So that's another way, but I'd recommend definitely the KX. It's the best way to go. So what else does the chlorine do to the plants? Well, basically, the chlorine and also fluorine, which some places do fluorinate their water, and if you have that, that's a little bit more challenging to take out than the chlorine. The chlorine's a lot easier than the fluorine. It basically causes root injury. And basically the roots don't grow as fast, and guess what? When the roots don't grow as fast, the root system's smaller, the plant is also going to be smaller. So your plants are going to grow slower. So, why not give every possible advantage to your plants so that they could have the most productive yield, they could grow the biggest that they want to without hindrance. I mean, a lot of the things that I do in my garden, I think back to nature. And I look to nature for answers. I mean, Mother Nature, could it be wrong? And in nature, I don't know any place where there's excessive amounts of chlorine in the water. I mean, trees and plants in nature get watered by the rain, by streams, and other things like that, and there's never any chlorine in high amounts. Of course, chlorine is also a mineral that are present in low amounts in regular water, and I'm not talking about that amount of chlorine. I'm talking about the extra added chlorine in water that we put to disinfect it. Abnormally high levels of probably any mineral or nutrients, probably not good for our plants. So what are some other ways if you have some house plants or container gardening inside, if you don't have a hose set up and you can't hook up something like this? Well, run it through your Brita filter, get some bottled water, but I prefer basically a real easy way to get the chlorine out of the water is what people that have fish do. They take basically a big pot, and I remember doing this as a kid when we had goldfish. You take a big pot of water, set it out, and put an air bubbler, like an air stone for a fish tank, and let it bubble up for 48 to 72 hours, and thereby you'll remove pretty much all the chlorine by doing that, but that could get to be a pain in the butt doing that all the time. So if you take a fish and put it in chlorinated water, guess what? The fish will die. I'm into production gardening. I don't want to just have a couple tomato plants that produce a couple tomatoes. I want to do everything I possibly can to produce the most quantity of tomatoes in the smallest amount of space, and why not? I mean, I think one of my teachers said, if it's worth doing right, if it's worth doing it all, it's worth doing right. I don't know, something like that. But so anyways, remember, plants are 90% water. So, I mean, whatever you feed them, the water is probably like the most important nutrient. It helps and aids in the photosynthesis process to make the chlorophyll, and that's basically the food for the plant. So water is very important. And if we look to commercial farmers, right? Commercial farmers, as a rule, don't use municipal water to feed their crops. hopefully you've learned about, water filtration, the reasons why we want to, maybe filter the water, and hopefully I'm motivated everybody out there to get a water filter and filter your own water instead of buying tap water. On a side note, the plastic bottles that are generated by the bottled water industry is insane. It's just not sustainable. It's, for companies making water. In most cases, the bottled water companies are taking tap water and just filtering it and then selling it to you in their bottle. So why not just filter your own water, have good enough water to drink for yourselves? So this is John Kohler with growingyourgreens.com. Keep drinking filtered water and feed your plants some filtered water. We'll see you next time.